Hello, Air Warriors, and welcome to another episode of Chevrons, the podcast of the enlisted force. I am your host, Chief Master Sgt. Sean Sullivan, and I'm joined here by two guests. The first is going to be Tech Sergeant Nunes, our newest addition to PA. Sergeant Nunes.
Hello, Chief. Thank you for having me. I'm Tech Sergeant Nunes. I came over from the Army PA, spent about 7 years with the Army National Guard, and before that, 10 years with the Army Actives component. And also joining me will be Chief Norris from the U.S. Space Force. Would you please introduce yourself, Chief?
Yes, sir. So first off, I'll always like to start with a place of gratitude. So thank you guys for allowing me to join your team and join this podcast. Awesome opportunity. So a little bit about myself. I'm currently the senior enlisted leader at the 6th Space Warning Squadron here at Cape Cod. We currently have 76 active duty folks, and they're split between space operators and the security forces defenders that guard the protection level 1 facility. Ground-based radar, we're charged with protecting the east coast of the United States from missile attacks and deterring our adversaries because we're always on watch 24/7. So pretty cool mission, definitely excited to be there. I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, so coming up on 20 years of service. Was definitely a bit directionless as a youth, and really it was an opportunity to join the military was amazing for me, and I've loved it, and I've stuck with it ever since. So it's been such an awesome career field, such an awesome career overall, and just recently within the last couple of years to have the opportunity to cross over from the U.S. Air Force to the Space Force has been awesome. So I'm loving it.
That right there, you just teed up my first question.
Yes,
so a little bit about my family background. My uncle joined the Air Force at late 1949 into 1950, and he served through Korea. And the most interesting stories I ever had from him were not about Korea, but they were about how it was walking into a branch of the service that was like days old when he walked in.
Yep.
You know, and being surrounded by people that were Army, but they're now Air Force, and just that whole cultural dynamic. I found it fascinating about how they just kind of molded in together and just kind of like became one.
Sure.
I'd like to hear that from your perspective because you have an Air Force history.
Yes, sir.
Now you're going into a new assignment with a new branch.
Correct.
It's multi-service because you have people coming in from all branches of the service, not just Air Force transitioning over.
Yes, sir.
And how are you managing that? And you know, what are your wins and any trouble spots that you had along the way?
Well, sure. Like a brand new service, we're 3 years old and we're very much in the infancy stage. So the way it worked is when the Space Force was created, the original call out was for anybody who was doing an organic space mission. Your option was to come on over to the Space Force since you're already doing a space mission, cross-train, or you were asked to leave the service. So that was the first organic. It just made sense. You were already doing a Space Force mission. And then the second call out was from the Air Force. Anybody who's doing a cyber or intel, that was a call out. So I happened to be in that pool of cyber, did 18 years traditional Air Force as a cyber troop communications. And when the opportunity arose in the Space Force, said, "Hey, we're looking for cyber folks," I said, "Yes, sir. I'm all for that." So I put in an application and just kind of went on about my life. And turns out they gave me a call. I got a call from Chief Master Sgt. Jake Simmons, a really good mentor of mine, who said, "Hey, you're going to be a part of the Space Force, and with that, we'd like you to go to Cape Cod as your first assignment." So I said, "I don't know where that is, but I'm excited for it." And it was definitely a learning curve coming from cyber communications, traditional Air Force, to now I'm working at a space warning squadron, and we do missile warning, missile defense. And when that's not really too prevalent, we have space domain awareness, which is basically keeping track of things in space, because I'm sure you guys are aware there's a lot of objects in space.
Yes.
Some very high valued assets, and also just a lot of space junk going around. So you don't want the space junk running into your high value items, your high value satellites and things like that. So yes, sir, it's definitely been a learning curve, a transition just for me. But I've been thoroughly impressed with my time in the Space Force. Even I think you kind of mentioned creating new ranks. we had to do the same thing. Yeah, I know we're on radio, but you can see my rank. But I think one of the cool things is very early on, the Space Force did a call out to all the Guardians. Hey, what do you want your rank to look like? And we took some inputs, and we came up with 3 or 4 different styles, and we got to vote, and it was almost democratic.
So it wasn't a top-down direction. It wasn't somebody said, "Hey, here's your rank." It was, let's see. Let's make it your culture, and they brought it down to the lowest level.
Indeed, and I think that worked out well, and our folks are bought in, and I love it. It's definitely unique. Walking around, people go, "Oh, what is that?" And even the Space Force tab, just walking around town, I'd say the number one question I get is that a real thing? I say, absolutely, it's a real thing. I check my LES, I get paid. We do a mission. So I think the big thing is that the Air Force was always doing a space mission, but it was just almost it got to be lost because there was so much going on with the flying mission that there wasn't a lot of time allocated to space. And finally, some smart leaders said, hey, we need to break off and have our own branch of service dedicated to mission only. That's why we rely on our teammates. We rely on our Air Force brothers and sisters to do the CE, the FSS, all those base functions, because Space Force, we're focused on mission. That's why we got space operators, we got cyber, and we got intel. That's the bread and butter of what we do. So it's exciting.
Yeah, and that's a lot of the same conversations that I had with my uncle back in the day as to the why they had to do it. And it came down to comprehension and understanding. When you start getting these mission sets that become so complex and so encompassing, it's very, very difficult. It was not fair for a land component commander to understand the strategic mission of the Air Force and the application of close air support and bombing missions. It just became too much.
Yes, sir.
And that's how it broke off. And the same is true with our space mission. I do have like one side question. This is more like a curiosity question. Because space, it's so cluttered. Is there like, I mean, how does it get filled up? I mean, stuff doesn't just get shot up there and just kind of float around. Well, is there like a big, like do all the countries work together to say, hey, I want to put something in space, it's going to go here, and is there like standoff distances and all that so things don't collide?
Yes. Some countries work together, not all for sure. The caveat is, within my last year, I have definitely gone through some training and tried to beef up my space knowledge. But there's some smart professionals I work with that have been doing space their whole career, who can answer better. But what I could tell you is, whenever satellites and objects are launched into space, there are different pieces of the rocket and the rocket body and fuel that will fall off, which you launch one thing and that creates 10 with all the different things that go on. There's old satellites that break apart and decay. There's a couple of our adversary countries that have tested their capability for what's called ASAT, anti-satellite.
Very familiar.
Are you familiar with that?
Very.
Yeah, that's where
scary.
They tested from the land, shot a missile up at one of their tests, a defunct satellite, blew it up as a test, but it also showed the world, hey, they're capable of doing that. But what that did was it created a whole bunch of space debris and space junk. And that happened twice with 2 different countries, and that's not sustainable. Space will become unsustainable if we keep doing that. It will just be too cluttered, and none of the countries can use it. So that's a big thing that the United States Space Force is interested in, is not cluttering up space. We want to maintain diplomacy, but we're not in the business of blowing up other satellites, because that would just make space it's not sustainable. So we want it to be a sustainable place.
I can just imagine how many pieces of everything that you guys are. Yeah, so that alone, as well as the missile defense and everything else you're doing, it sounds like a pretty amazing career field. Now, what branches of the service have fed into that? Obviously Air Force, but have all branches fed into Space Force? And are they taking their identity as, say, a Marine and then transverting into Space Force, or do you still have other services working space missions that are working the mission, but they're still staying true to their own branch?
No, that's a great question, Chief. So yes, when you come into the Space Force as a guardian, your records do reflect your prior service, but you are guardian from here on out. We're moving forward, right? So that's an important aspect. Once you're a guardian, you're a guardian. We do value those different aspects because I think to one of your questions was what branches? Yes, the Army, the Marines, and the Navy. If you were doing some sort of space mission already or cyber and intel, you had the opportunity to come on over, and we've had some great successes with just some high speed individuals that come over from different, and they bring those outside perspective, right? I just think that's an amazing opportunity. So we're not just pigeonholed with everybody came from the Air Force. We got this diversity of thought, and it's such a cool piece. And with that being said, we got a lot of transfers. Right now, we're about 8,600 strong in the Space Force. That is tiny compared to other branches of service.
But it's becoming a strong culture.
It is.
Yeah.
It is for sure. And so the Space Force differs a little bit in other services, like perhaps the Air Force, where you've got one officer and a cadre of enlisted underneath that. With that 8,600 in the Space Force, we're kind of split half and half between officers and enlisted, which makes for a pretty cool dynamic, because even on the Missile Warning Ops Center where we're at, we got an officer and enlisted working side by side, doing the thing, lockstep, working together. And as I mentioned, always on call, 24/7, always watching for any sea-launched ballistic missiles or intercontinental ballistic missiles. But as you can imagine, that doesn't happen too often because our adversaries know we're watching. So in the meantime, the folks keep busy with space domain awareness, and that's a full-time job because you got a lot of countries that are getting in the space game, and a lot of countries that are putting objects in space that are no longer just benign, as in just going on orbit. They got the capability to move and maneuver and come close to our satellites, and we're like, oh, whoa, what are you doing up there? So it's definitely a contested space.
Now, what about civilian population? Do you have a large number of designated civilian, Title V civilians that work
We do. Yes, sir. We got a large counterpart of civilians. I can't speak writ large. I really have a limited space experience, if you will, because this is my very first Space Force base here at Cape Cod. I've been doing the Air Force mission, but we've got 6 civilians that work here at Cape Cod, and you got data analysts and folks that make sure the radar is running up to speed. Civil engineers to make sure the contract and maintenance. But overall, across the Space Force, we do have a large civilian population. Most of those folks are prior military, and they bring that experience with them. So yes, sir, those are absolutely our teammates. Yeah,
you're almost selling me on a fourth branch of the service. I may have to, add one more in.
Yes, sir.
But speaking about branch changes and experience, Sergeant Nunes, you have just come to us from the Army.
Yes,
now,
sir.
What did you do in the Army? Tell us a little bit about your story. You were PA in the Army as well?
Yes, sir. When I was active, I was a military policeman, so security forces.
Another cop. Love it.
Yeah.
So I did the requisite taxpayer-paid vacations to Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah.
I joined the Guard for a new challenge as I attended college, and I switched into public affairs in the Army side. And about 8 months ago, a Air Force captain named Aaron Smith.
Yes,
if you know,
I know Captain Smith very well.
He came over and highly suggested that I come speak with Tim. It was a little bit over 8 months ago. My switch was 8 months ago. And he was like, hey, the 102nd would like public affairs. I think you're up to the challenge. How about you think about coming down? And I said, all right, I'll talk to Tim. I'll see if I'm someone that he wants to work with on a daily basis. I don't think I had to twist his arm too hard. But I made the switch, and kind of, perhaps on the vein of what you also ran into, Chief Norris, it was Army patches off, Air Force patches on.
Heck yeah.
And I knew that in it, I was no longer U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Kevin Nunes. I was United States Air Force Technical Sergeant Kevin Nunes. And I had experience, but I didn't want to bring the baggage associated with it.
Right.
Because I need to lean in and embrace the Air Force. So each and every time that I show up, I'm listening, I'm watching, I'm learning, I'm saying, what is the culture here? What is each piece of the Air Force that I need to learn and fully invest myself in to fit in the service and adopt that culture? That's why, Chief Norris, for you, I'm very interested in how you're kind of formulating and bringing those people in and embracing them for that cultural aspect, because it's so important from top down all the way through.
Correct. Yeah, one of the things I speak to is I think it's important to note that the Space Force honored any inter-service transfer from another branch that had a promotion. If you had a line number from the Army or from the Navy and Marines, honor that. Come on over, and you get your new rank, and we'll come over and put you somewhere commensurate with that.
That is huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is big.
That was a big selling feature, because what's the benefit if you're going to transfer to the Space Force and then not have the opportunity of promotion or be demoted or whatever, or lose out? So, yeah, I think the Space Force is doing things right when it comes to the culture. Another one is assignments. So being that we're so small, retention is important, right? Mm-hmm. We're 8,600 strong, so it's a pretty small force. So one of the things that the Space Force is really getting after is assignments, because as you guys should typically know, assignments equal happiness. That's kind of a term, right? If you can get to where you want to go, and if the Space Force can get you to a location that makes you happy and makes your family happy, odds are you're going to stay in. So that's really something that the Space Force can get after, being so small, is that we can work with you one-on-one individually to figure out what's good for you, what's good for your family, first and foremost, and then we figure out, hey, what job can we do when we get you there? And if you're happy, your family's happy, we're all working, we're doing a good thing. So I think that's a really good aspect that the Space Force is able to get after. The Air Force is just such a huge machine. Yes, I mean, they don't have the time or the bandwidth to talk to people one-on-one. Hey, what would you like to do? Where would you like to go? It's here's your assignment. You don't like it? Get out, next man up or next person up. So that's kind of a difference. Just the Air Force being so huge and the Space Force being so small, we can have that family-like touch to it. And when I got an assignment notification, it wasn't an email. I got a phone call from a chief. Pretty cool how they're doing things. So yeah, the culture. We're growing, we're getting there, but I think we're getting after. We're doing some things right.
It sounds like you guys have like a lot of the same flavor that we have in the National Guard, particularly the Air National Guard.
Okay.
What I love about the Air National Guard, I was active duty Marines, I was active duty Army, I was never active duty Air Force, but deployments. But that whole active duty flavor, you realize that you realize how big it all is.
Sure.
And you realize how small you are in the decision-making process. And even though every soldier, Marine, sailor, coastie, guardian, and airman has a value, every human who wears a uniform is valuable, our most valuable resource. You just get lost in the sea of, geez, I could be in Germany for 2 years, and then I can be in Texas, and then I can be in Afghanistan, and I can be here. Where with the National Guard, we kind of have that culture where, hey, I'm going to be with where we're sitting today in the 102nd Intelligence Wing, and you can build those friendships, and you can build those liaisons, and you can have that stability of not having to move a lot, better family dynamic,
stability. Correct. Yeah.
It seems like you have a lot of that based on the number of locations that we can put the Space Force in, because you're not in 50 states, which is, why a nationwide Space National Guard would never make sense. You're only in certain states and certain locations.
And I would offer pretty primo locations, you know what I'm saying?
I would say
Colorado is the Mecca, if you will. We call it the mothership.
Cape Cod, Colorado, California, they don't suck.
Yeah, absolutely. Got some spots down in Florida too, and the Space Force is always expanding. New squadrons are standing up, new deltas are standing up, which is equivalent to a wing. It's pretty amazing the opportunities that we have, and I would say full transparency when it comes to assignments. Like literally, I as I mentioned, I think we talked about that. My next assignment's going to be to Vandenberg, to Delta One, moving over to training and readiness. But just the full spectrum was opened up. Hey, here's what's out there. Here's what we need. And I don't think in the Air Force that transparency was always there. You got an opportunity to update your dream sheet, and it would kind of go down the list, but you kind of got what you got. But again, I think that's just a product of the Space Force being so small, and we have such a touch point to our talent management office that's why we call it our guardians of talent, and we value talent in the Space Force. And because of that, we want to do what's right for you and your family. If we can make you happy, that means you're probably going to stay in service longer. And really, that's what we need, because we're so small. We got to have our folks stay in.
That philosophy is the philosophy that every leader and every branch of the service needs to embrace, because that's what, that's the reality of it.
It's caring and connection. I think that connection is so important. Just connecting to people as human beings. And here at Cape Cod, we're such a small unit. As I mentioned, 76 active duty. That's not a lot. They've got squadrons in the Air Force that are 400, 450 strong. You know what I'm saying? So it's an opportunity to know people one-on-one. We PT together, we sweat together, we train together, and I call it leading with love. Like I have love for every one of my brothers and sisters in arms, because we're all doing this to protect the nation, right? That's ultimately what it comes down to. You mentioned the term warfighters, right? No matter what your name tape is,
doesn't matter.
We're doing this together, one team, one fight, and the branches offer different specialties, if you will, but it's very exciting to be a part of the nation's newest service in the Space Force.
And we talk about cultures all the time in the military.
Sure.
The Marine Corps has a culture, the Army has a culture, but what everybody needs to embrace, whether you are Coast Guard, you are Space Force, wherever, doesn't matter. We are truly all part of one culture, and that is the warrior culture.
Yes, sir.
We are all warriors. Doesn't matter what your job is. We all have to be focused in on that. But it is really cool. I'll call them counterculture. Or you can't. Counterculture is the wrong word, but subcultures. How each branch of the service kind of has its own flavor, its own hey, it's cool to be a Marine because of this. It's cool to be in the Army because of that. It sounds really cool to be in the Space Force. I mean, I'm serious. You're selling me. So now I have a question for you.
Okay.
Gibbs. I know the answer to this, but I don't think our audience does.
Okay.
So my daughter decides that, hey, Dad, I want to join the Space Force. And I say, that is awesome. And day one, she goes to the recruiter. What is the flow like from there? Where would she go to boot camp? Is there a Space Force boot camp?
Great questions. So the Space Force does have a plan to have a one centralized spot for boot camp. But right now, the way it works is because we're so small, we don't have that infrastructure built yet. So we're still borrowing from our teammates in the Air Force. So what happens is if you're a brand new recruit in the Space Force, you will go to Lackland. You will go through your 9 weeks of basic military training, but you will go with a flight of all Guardians. And that's the difference. So you're still going to use the infrastructure in the same type of training that the Air Force goes to, but you break off and you go to specific Guardian Spirit, Guardian Ideal type training, and you're with your brothers and sisters that are in the Guardian. And so if you were to break out, for example, and do cyber, you're still going to go to Keesler Air Force Base and get your cyber. If you're going to be intel, you're going to go to Goodfellow in Texas. If you're going to be space operator, you go over to Vandenberg to get your training. So right now we're still borrowing from our teammates in the Air Force, but the vision is to have a one-stop shop where let's call it Patrick, let's call it Vandenberg, whatever the service decides, to where you will go to that location, you get your basic training, you get your tech school, you get some qual training, and then boom, we send you out to the field and you're ready to rock. So we're not there yet. Again, only a little over 3 years in, so we don't have the infrastructure built yet. The service is still deciding on where different headquarters are going to be, but I'm excited to be a part of that change, and I hope that there is a one-stop shop where it's strictly just basic training for Guardians. That's going to be so awesome, so cool.
Yeah, that will be like a cool thing, because then you can add your own flavor into that. So
yeah, and if you said your daughter was thinking of it,
if she's listening to this podcast right now, every fiber in her being is screaming no. But
if she wants to come do a tour over at Cape Cod, take a look at the radar. A lot of different mission sets in the Space Force. I'm a part of Delta 4 right now, which does focus on missile warning, missile defense in that architecture, because it's pretty cool to know that the entire United States is protected 24/7, 365 with ground-based radars, with satellite-based radars. We're looking from the top, we're looking from the bottom. We are watching 24/7, 365. It can be a thankless job, but it's a pretty cool mission. But that's just one mission set. So if your daughter's interested, have her come on by, give a tour. We have the Civil Air Patrol come by all the time and kind of check out some cool things that we do. So we're always interested in advertising what we got going on.
Well, what's your age cutoff?
For you talking about
to come in, because and not for me,
yeah,
but I talk to people all the time that are prior service,
sure,
that are thinking about coming back in, that are like, hey, I did my 8 years, I did my 12 years, but it's like my choices are Army, Navy, Marines, blah blah. If a prior service, somebody had an intel background, say, say Navy intelligence, and they're 36 years old, and
they're hungry to join the Space Force,
and they were interested. What is your age cutoff to bring people in?
So
prior service.
Yeah, I'd be misspeaking if I gave you a number. I want to say that we're still following the Department of Air Force guidelines, which is 34, 36. But what I'll tell you is if you bring knowledge, skills, and abilities and you're hungry to be a Guardian, go talk to a recruiter. There's waivers for everything. You know what I'm saying? Like if you bring value and you're bought in and you want to be a part of this team and you bring those knowledge, skills, and abilities, man, give it a shot. I think it's worth talking to the recruiter. What's worse I can say? No?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was going to say, sir, in that vein for Space Force coming up all along its own, do you see any specific difference? Actually, as I should say this, have you had anyone go through that full Space Force pipeline and come to your squadron?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So let me back up a little bit. You had mentioned like with the inter-service transfers, you're an inter-service transfer, and I think you use the term baggage. So yeah, people come in, they spent 15, 16 years in a different service, and they come with those scar tissues, the baggage. I used to do it like this. This is how I was treated. Yep. And we're very big in the Space Force. Hey, you don't need to bring that baggage with you. We're moving full speed ahead. So one more time, what was the original question?
So I was looking for if you have any people who made it through that pipeline that you outlined, and like
I backtracked and I forgot. Yeah. So definitely, we actually have a couple of Guardians at Cape Cod who have gone through the basic training at Lackland, and then they have gone through the pipeline training over at Vandenberg, and they got selected for Cape Cod to be the first time. So it's pretty cool. That's all they know is being a Guardian, being in Space Force, and that's why I was kind of talking earlier. Some of us come from different services. We bring this other stuff that we brought along with us. But I'm excited for this future generation because that's all they're going to know. And give it 5-6 years, they're going to be the NCOs and they're going to be the backbone. And then give it 10 years, they're going to be the senior NCOs. And through attrition, just us older guys, we're not going to be around in the service forever. We'll be moved out, and it's very exciting to see this brand new generation of Guardians. That's all they know. They've been in the Space Force the entire time. So, yeah, exciting times ahead.
Is Space Force right now, sir, is it only an active component, or do they have versions of Guard and Reserve?
So right now it's active. There are talks about how to possibly incorporate. The Space Force is really partnering with the industry and getting after different opportunities. There's more than I can even speak to. There's opportunities that are out there for you to come over from.
Industry and
industry
America.
Just go right to a certain rank. Again, a lot of them out there, but we have not dialed in quite yet a reserve component. We're still focused on the active duty yet. So time will tell. Things are changing, but yeah, perhaps in the future.
All right. So you got fresh new full Space Force coming up. How are you doing kind of like development and evaluations? Are you rolling from the Air Force system, or are you developing your own?
You talking about the performance evaluations?
Yes, sir.
So yeah, that's a big fork in the road right now. So it's something that we as leaders are keyed up on because we're Guardians, we're in the Space Force, but we're still using the old Air Force forms with all the Air Force terminology, and that is 100% in the works. It's a Guardian Space Force evaluation form is scheduled to be coming out soon. Don't quite have a time yet. I know one of the things is we're working on, do we want one form for officer and enlisted both? That's just Guardian? Or are we working on two forms for officer and enlisted, almost similar to the way the Air Force did it? So we're working on that. That's part of the culture. Very important to have our own identity, have our own performance, and the things that we're being asked to get after in the Guardian spirit, the things that we're asked to develop are not the same terminology that's in the Air Force or in those forms. So yes, we fall under Department of the Air Force, but we're actively working on our own culture, and definitely those performance reports are one of them.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Yes,
also,
sir.
You mentioned the key word for us. So you said forks in the road.
Yeah.
Do you have any more forks in the road that you're actively looking at right now, or things you see over the horizon?
I took a couple notes. I think along that same vein of reports and evaluations. So the Space Force is considering, do we need to follow the traditional static closeout dates of the Air Force? That made sense in the Air Force, but do we need to do that? We're really there's a lot of forks in the road. We're looking at, hey, that's the way the Air Force did it. Is that the way we need to do it in the Space Force? Again, the Air Force is so huge. It's a massive business. We're so small in the Space Force. We have the opportunity to change and mold. And there's several things when it comes to promotions. I mean, talk about assignments drive happiness. Promotions, that's important to people, right? So that's something we're actively focused on because that's important to our force, right? It's endless. The only constant is change right now in the Space Force. So there's a lot of forks in the road, but it's I'd say more quality of life type things, and how do we break off from the way the Air Force used to do things, and how do we move forward with our own culture?
Right. So taking ownership of each and every process, each idea, each physical embodiment, and pushing it forward.
It does. It takes time. It takes time. Like we talked about basic training, we'd love to have our own specific, but we're not there yet. We need time for that infrastructure. So, all in due time. Again, 3 years old. We're a toddler in this in this stage of life, but very excited for the way things are going in the future.
Now, what about like rank structure? Are the Guardians still going through an E1 through E9, and are you guys still using the same 3-tier system that the other branches of the service are using, where you're junior enlisted, NCO, senior NCO?
Correct. Yes, sir. We are not using the term airman specialist 1 through 4, and definitely whenever you go to make E5, you go to make sergeant. We're going to send you to some type of leadership training, and so again, the vision is to have that centralized right now in Colorado to go to that training, and the same thing when you go into the senior NCO academy. So we do have the tiered approach to when you're going to a specific rank. Hey, we need to come together and get you the skills and the tools you need to go forth and lead Guardians. So yes, sir, still following that same rank structure.
Because leadership is leadership. I mean, when you get to the senior leadership academies, we can go to a Coast Guard academy, we can go to the Marine Corps academy. So I mean, academy is academy. So I would love to see the day where Space Force has a NCO or senior NCO option that airmen could cross over and go to. I just think that'd be fascinating.
It's
I
in
think
the
that'd
works.
be fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things at the chief level is when you made chief in the Air Force, you got to go to the CLC.
Yes.
Well, the Guardians have pulled away from that, and it's going to be more of like a case-by-case basis, almost like a sister service, if you will, and we're doing our own Chiefs orientation course. So yeah, definitely, it's pretty cool. A lot of things, a lot of changes coming in the Space Force. I mean, that's just the nature of it, where we're at. We're so new, we're getting after it. So yeah, it's very exciting.
It's got to be, I was just going to say, it's got to be so exciting for you being on the precipice of this entire change and being able to be such an agent of change at the same time. I don't want to say I envy you, because I don't envy anybody, but I respect what you're doing, and God, it would be great to have that same opportunity, because it sounds like an awesome opportunity for you and for all the other Guardians that are enacting this at all rank structures, enlisted and officer rank structures. It just sounds like it'd be, a dream come true. It'll kind of like, create your culture as you go along based on what your mission set's going to be, and you're creating your own history every day.
Yes, sir.
That's pretty cool.
It is. Our goal is, as building this culture, if you're a Guardian, we want people to, when a Guardian walks in the room, we want people to recognize, like, wow, that's awesome. That's a super cool job. We want a Guardian to be the best teammate you've ever had. Really, that's the culture we're getting after. We want to provide meaningful work. We want to invest in our people, but also hold them accountable. This is just such an amazing time that it really, I'd say managing the change can be challenging, because it seems like there's always new things changing, but that's just the nature of it, and we're doing a pretty good job so far.
Now, is the Space Force getting involved a lot now in joint operational planning?
A little bit. So the Space Force has stood up a couple overseas locations. One is Space Indo-PACOM over in Hawaii.
Ooh,
they stood up Space Central Command, teamed up down there in MacDill, and there's a Space European Command over in Ramstein. So definitely there's some growth opportunities when it comes to the joint world. The Space Force took over the JTAGS missions from the Army as well. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it dealt with more of the space operations. So we've had a lot of inter-service transfers from the Army come over, and they're doing that. So yeah, there are opportunities coming up when it comes to the joint world. Yes, sir.
Okay. Are there also opportunities when it comes up to liaising with civilian counterparts, such as most obvious comes to mind will be NASA?
Mm-hmm.
Items like that. Have you experienced any of those yet?
Not me personally. I think they're out there, as I mentioned, the kind of partner with industry type of things that are going on, and there's opportunities to go to school or do a partnership or internship at the L3 or Boeing or all these different companies that are offering things, and then you bring that knowledge, skills back into the service. So yeah, I don't have a lot of experience in that realm because when it comes to Space Force, I'm definitely new. Yeah. There are some folks who had that organic experience, and they were doing space ops in the Air Force, and when they crossed over, it was a natural transition. But for me, I'm playing catch up a little bit.
You mentioned before when you see someone, a space guardian, walk into a room, you want people to know.
Yes.
Can you give me a brief background for any knowledge you may have about, say, a visual item like your dress uniform?
Yeah, so that's also culture we're getting after. Obviously, you guys can see mine. We're carrying over from the traditional Air Force uniform, changed the name tapes, changed the ranks, but... sorry, one more time.
So the pure visual cultural indication of each service is generally like their dress uniform?
Yeah. So the dress uniform is still in the works. There's a call out going right now, and there's a test phase going on. Yep. So I think you might have seen some of the senior leaders.
Seen some beautiful, sharp,
very cool
colored,
looking. You got some dark blues and some grays. So some of the senior leaders are wearing those right now, and there's a test phase going on right now to where there's been a select group of guardians that were pulled from all different places to wear and fit test these uniforms, and that is currently going on, and they're taking feedback. And I know some of those feedback have been rolled up the chain as far as, hey, this collar doesn't work, or my accoutrement doesn't fit correctly, and so that's a back and forth phase that's going on right now. But I would say, just the uniform alone being different is one thing, but we are definitely focused on when a guardian walks in the room, this person is credible, this person is knowledgeable, this person is reliable, going to be an amazing teammate, an amazing partner, beyond just what the name tapes say, and being bought in, being part of the warfighter culture, one team, one fight. But that's really what we're going for is, man, when a guardian walks in the room, you got a teammate on your side.
Yeah, because those intrinsic things, like you talk about, it's okay. I was a Marine. I can walk into any room now, 35 years removed from the Marine Corps. Sure. In any room and look around, I can tell you who all the former Marines are and who all the current Marines are, because it's something that you develop within.
And I would offer, in the Marine Corps, you get a very consistent product. If over the course of, let's call it 16 years, you get a E7 in the Marine Corps, you have a very consistent product, which you're going to get. And I think the Marine Corps has an amazing culture. The Space Force is definitely trying to, I don't know if copy is the right word, but
emulate.
Yeah, that's a better word. Thank you. Trying to take some of those things. Personally, I had the opportunity to go to the Marine Corps Advanced Course at Camp Pendleton. Yeah, sister service. 119 fired up gunnies and one Air Force guy. So it was an experience, right? And they let me have it. But it was an amazing opportunity. And really the one thing I noticed when it comes to the difference in culture is, sir, you know this, every Marine or rifleman, first and foremost, you were taught to be a trained killing machine. That is what you do. And then your second identity is you have a skill, a trade, a craft, right? And that's a consistent product where at the time, what I found when I was still in the Air Force when I went through, the Air Force was kind of flipped. We identify by our badge and our AFSC. Right. Well, I'm very much like I'm a cyber, I'm a CE, I'm a cop. And in the meantime, we go to the range sometimes and we shoot, but it wasn't exactly a warfighter mentality. So I think the Space Force is really trying to get after that amazing aspect of you get a very consistent product after so many years of service. And the Marine Corps definitely does it right in that aspect.
And we're trying to do that, too, within the Air Force. I know particularly like in this wing, it started with my mentor, Chief Dubuque, retired command chief from this wing.
Okay.
And when he took over, I was his wing first sergeant.
Sure.
And when he took over, his biggest pet peeve when he would go talk to an airman was, "Hey, what do you do?"
Yep.
And if they said, "I'm a justa," or "I only do this," or
I just work at the gym.
It would just blow his mind. He'd be like, "No, you're an air warrior. You are an air warrior. You're an airman."
You got to beat it into him because that mentality wasn't quite there. Yeah.
And that was one of the things I identified a long time ago. Was like, you're right. That is the thing that the Marine Corps did so well in identifying a culture. And it's so great that you now, because like now we're trying in the Air Force, we're trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube because, it's just the way we went operationally in the Air Force for so many years where it became more about, more business-like. And I do cyber and I have my left and right lane. And we're in a new era where multi-capable airmen better be embraced as not just a thing on an org chart. It must be your way of life, and we are all air warriors, and we need to move forward smartly to accomplish the mission. So we're trying to backtrack into that, where it's so great. You have the opportunity from like flash to bang, boom.
Yep.
You can set that tone. I can't wait to see where Space Force is 10 years from now. I think it's just going to be incredible. It's going to be incredible.
Me too. I hope to still be around. For me, I'm excited because right now I'm in Operations Command, but moving over at the next assignment to be in Training and Readiness, and I'm going to be a part of that team that's going to be a part of the curriculum as far as that basic training and the tech schools and the eval training and stuff like that. So, yeah, very exciting. I'm thrilled to be a part of this. I feel honored and humbled. Man, when I got that call, when I got the selection, I was a little bit floored. I'm like, you guys want me in the Space Force? And so it's been such a good decision. And I'll tell you, there was a lot of folks that were apprehensive because there were folks that had been in the Air Force for 17, 18 years. And when the opportunity came, I'm so close to 20. Do I want to do this? Do I want to roll the dice and take this gamble on a brand new service I don't know anything about? But I was all in. Hey, let's do it. When I put the application, they called me. There was no going back. So I'm super excited to be a part of this Space Force team. Proud to be a Guardian, and I'm thankful that you guys are interested, and we have the opportunity to kind of spread the love here on the podcast.
Hey, and we're starting to get close to to our normally allocated time. I mean, we could probably stretch this into a 3-hour podcast and have listeners, but I do have one more question for you before we just wrap up for final comments.
Okay.
One of the biggest thing that the Air Force, in fact, all branches of the service are struggling with is resilience and resilience models and trying to stop our airmen from breaking or whatever. What is the Space Force doing for resilience? Do you have your own programs? Do you have your own ideas? Or because of your culture change and where you're at, it's really so everybody's, it hasn't impacted yet?
Well, I'll be honest. It's hard for me to speak on resilience across the force because I just don't have that touch point across the force. But yeah, it's absolutely important. And I think, again, focused on how can we make you happy and make your family happy. I think that kind of ties into resilience. We're definitely still big on physical fitness, spiritual fitness. We still have, I guess, what the Air Force would call stand-down days, where we hey, let's pause ops for a minute and let's get together and let's talk about stuff. But I would say here at Cape Cod Space Force Station, we just have the opportunity to pause, and you can bring your significant others, you can bring your spouses, you can bring your kids, you can bring your dogs. There's actually right now there's a going away for our DO, and hey, shut it down. We're gonna go have a little event outside at the lighthouse, and just an opportunity to connect. And I think that connection piece is just something that we can do. Just connect as human beings. I'm under the auspice that, look, we all volunteered to be a part of this service. We've got family support. We've got bills to pay. We've got loved ones we're trying to take care of. So we just want to treat each other with dignity and respect, and we want you to have meaningful work. And I think we're getting after that here at Cape Cod by just focusing on that connection piece, just as human beings, just as good people. Let's get to know you, and I think that that shows when people will come up and talk to you about, hey, I'm struggling, I'm having a hard time. Well, let's go get you the help you need. So,
yes, that's something I've said all along. Is if we look at resilience as a culture, it won't need to be a program. And it sounds like you guys doing a great job with that.
We have the opportunity, being so small, we're kind of geographically isolated, that we are family. I mean, 10 hours at work, I spend more time with my coworkers sometimes than I do with my actual family, and you get to be family, and it comes from a place of love. And man, this is just such a great organization to be a part of, and I'm excited for the future, and I'm excited for those future guardians, that this is what they know, and they're going to be really carrying that banner. Those are going to be the ones that take this thing forward.
All right.
So I'd like to break in. This is Tim Sandlin from the production booth.
Hey, Tim.
And I'd like to just break in for a moment, and I want to address something you said, Chief Norris. One thing that I've noticed every time I've gone over and visited your squadron,
yes, sir.
If I had one word to describe your crew over there, camaraderie.
Camaraderie, 100%.
And that is like something, you don't see it everywhere. It does exist. We see it over here in the 102nd. We've got a great team of wingmen. But your squadron, if I had to say, boil it down to one word, it's camaraderie. And then the second thing I wanted to say is how great it is to be at this point in this service, in your position. You're planting the seeds.
Yes, sir.
And being a student of military history, just being able to see the first few trees grow from your efforts. And it takes me back to like the early days of SAC, and
you're bringing it way back. Strategic Air Command.
I haven't been around that long, but I've read a lot of books. I've seen a lot of movies. One of my favorite movies, Strategic Air Command. No kidding.
Yep.
And just seeing the early days of a service branch, that doesn't happen. That's like Halley's Comet coming around. It doesn't happen every day. And how wonderful it is to be on the ground floor of something so special. So I just want to put my 2 cents in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that comment. Well, we love having you and your teammates come over and join us and help us out, taking photos and whatnot, and participating. And yeah, I would agree. Camaraderie. We use the term a tight-knit family. We're so close. I mean, we'll have coffee talks on a Friday, and really we'll cook breakfast in the lighthouse and make coffee. We'll just talk about something. I think sometimes in the Air Force it got to be like just such a mountain to move. Like, hey, I have to do this big professional development thing. Like in the Space Force, we're like, no, let's just get together and let's talk about something. Let's talk about public speaking. Let's talk about connection. Let's talk about character, courage, commitment, all these things. And I think that comes through when we're having a fun event. Like, man, we all know each other, and your pets and your kids that are always invited. And man, it's all family and it's all love there. And yeah, I think that I think the second piece, what we were talking about, was
the history.
The history.
Yeah. And being on the ground floor, planting the seeds and watching the trees grow.
Yeah. So the note I took on that was building the bench. So really, at my stage, I'm on the downhill slide of this thing. I'm gonna keep doing everything I can to make the team successful, but really growing our replacements and building that bench, because we got some brand new, hungry, motivated, way smarter than I ever was Guardians that are fired up and ready to crush this mission. And that's part of my job and the senior NCO's job, and even the NCO's too, is to build that bench and train them, give them the skills they need to go forth and be great, because this is going to be their service. And yeah, excited to see where it's going to be in 10 years. I think you're going to see some big changes coming down. So yeah, thanks for those comments, Tim.
Thanks.
I have one final comment,
Sure.
and then I'm going to get into my final question. My comment is to every listener out there. Right now, we have enlisted leaders at every level. I know we have squadron commanders, group commanders, probably even some wing commanders out here listening to this.
Sure.
There is no reason that we cannot replicate all that positivity, that communication, that fellowship.
Sure.
What you are able to bring to the table because of the uniqueness of your culture and where you're going with it. Every leader out there right now, no matter how big or small, can emulate that. just by utilizing the same practices that Chief Norris is doing and that the Space Force is utilizing right now because of their uniqueness. Caring, compassion, provide your airmen with hope, make sure that you have trust and empowerment.
Yes, sir.
And we can create the same culture across all branches of the service, because what you're saying right there, that is the essence of being a professional warrior. And if we're all professional warriors, we can emulate that without having to jump into different branches of the service. However, you guys are awesome. I got to say right there, I must say I was honored to have this opportunity to speak to you. The only other Guardian I had the opportunity to speak to, with any degree, is Chief Trowbridge.
Okay.
Because of all the different enlisted things that we go to, and Chief Bass always brings them in.
Sure.
So to see the same messages, the same intensity, the same love of everything he's doing resonating down from the senior enlisted guy to you, I can see it permeates through Space Force, and that's fantastic. So that was my editorial comment. Now I do have one final wrap up.
Okay.
Final thoughts or any words of wisdom that either of you would like to share with the listeners. I am going to start with you, Sergeant Nunes, because you've been quiet too long.
Yeah.
What do you got?
I would say that much like I made the choice to switch after 17 years, and much like Chief illustrated, people have a lot of friction points of resistance to that because it is a brand new service. However, it is worth it. I can tell you that hands down. If you are considering a change, Space Force, 100%. Lean in, put in your packet, reach out to them, see what they say. It can be intimidating when you think of encompassing an entirely new branch, but from what Chief Norris said, I'm almost considering it myself.
Yeah,
we
come on.
Got you. You're ours.
Teammate, happy to have you.
I may have a problem with that.
Not sure Jeff wants it, but no, it's a little bit of adversity is very beneficial for growth.
Yes.
And 100%, if you can cast off your, not forget, but cast off your baggage and create yourself into a place where you can accept the new area you are in and emulate and create it to build that bench, as Chief put it. Like, absolutely, lean in, embrace, and just move forward as fast as you can. I believe the term I recently was accelerate until apprehended.
Yes.
Okay, I like that.
My favorite term.
Perhaps. That's your favorites there.
That's my favorite.
Perhaps that's something that can also be used and perhaps modified by the Space Force into a differerent term as it's...
Yeah, maybe some trajectory type terminology.
But absolutely, Chief, that's what I have for input.
I like it in you make a very, very good point there. Everybody out there listening, if you are comfortable doing what you're doing and you feel stagnant, then it's time to create a change. Now, I'm not saying change branches of the service or go from the Army to the Air Force or from the Air Force to the Space Force. What I'm saying is see what else is out there to make you uncomfortable. If you look at possibly being an additional duty first sergeant or try a specialty duty, look at a new AFSC, try to find a different leadership thing you can do.
Right.
Keep yourself uncomfortable because that is the stimulus for growth and change. So great points there, Tech Sergeant Nunes. The same question for you, Chief. Any final thoughts or words of wisdom you want to share for our listeners?
Yeah, just a couple things from me. I would say caring for people is really what's important. Just caring about people, I think, is inherent what we do as military members. But taking care of those people by growing and investing in them is really the high bar. What we're really trying to get after. We've been given such a tremendous opportunity with this brand new service as Guardians, and we're really leading with love. We care about every one of our Guardians. We care about the member, the family, the career progression. It's just such an amazing team to be a part of. And if anybody's thinking about joining space, look, I'll tell you, the competition in space is real. No one wants a war that goes into space, but we have to be ready because our adversaries are the threat is real. What we try to do is promote deterrence, but if that fails, we're going to be ready to win, and that comes with building that bench of folks who are hungry, motivated, and some of the best teammates you've ever had. So, yes, sir. If anybody's interested in kind of coming to see how we do business, you got my contact over at Cape Cod Space Force Station. Absolutely.
It's a great visit. I've been there a couple of times. It's a fantastic facility. All right. Tech Sergeant Nunes, thank you. Chief Norris, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Listeners, once again, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Chevrons. Look forward to talking to you again next month. And between now and then, Dies Optimus Semper. Sully out.